The unexpected assignment. The twin moons hovered over the strange alien sky, casting a soft, ethereal glow across the landscape. Sergeant Liam Carter stood at the edge of the human embassy on the planet Viridia, a place far removed from Earth. The embassy, a stark contrast to the vibrant alien city beyond, was his home for the last year, where he had been stationed to protect the human delegation. His military training had prepared him for many things, but life on Viridia had been a unique experience. As the days turned into weeks and months, Liam found himself adapting to the alien culture. The Viridians, with their tall, slender frames and shimmering blue skin, were a curious and advanced species. Their technology far surpassed anything Earth had achieved, yet they were a peaceful people, more interested in exploration and knowledge than in conquest. Liam's thoughts were interrupted by the sudden arrival of a Viridian envoy. The group was led by Elara, a high-ranking official known for her diplomatic skills. Elara was a striking figure, her deep violet eyes filled with wisdom and a hint of mystery. She approached Liam with a serene smile. "Sergeant Carter," Elara greeted him, her voice melodic and soothing. "We have an unusual request from our council. We wish to engage in a deeper cultural exchange with humanity." Liam raised an eyebrow, curious about what this entailed. "What kind of exchange are we talking about?" Elara gestured towards the city. "Our leaders have decided that it would be beneficial for both our species if a human were to live among us, to experience our way of life firsthand. You have been selected for this task." Liam was taken aback. He had expected another routine day at the embassy, not an invitation to immerse himself in alien culture. "Why me?" Elara's smile widened. "You have shown great adaptability and curiosity during your time here. Our people have taken notice. We believe you are the perfect candidate to bridge the gap between our worlds." The idea intrigued Liam. He had always been drawn to the unknown, and this opportunity was too good to pass up. "All right, I'll do it. When do we start?" Immediately, Elara replied, her eyes twinkling with approval. "I will personally escort you to your new home." Liam nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. He gathered his belongings and followed Elara through the city. As they walked, he couldn't help but marvel at the Viridian architecture. The buildings were tall and sleek, constructed from materials that shimmered in the moonlight. The streets were filled with Viridians, their graceful movements and soft-spoken conversations creating a peaceful atmosphere. Elara led Liam to a grand tower, its surface reflecting the light of the moons. "This will be your residence," she said, guiding him inside. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior, with walls that seemed to pulse with a gentle, living energy. "You will find everything you need here," Elara continued, her tone professional. "Our people will be at your disposal to assist you with anything you require. This is not just a mission of observation, Sergeant Carter. We want you to become one of us, to truly understand our ways." Liam nodded, taking in his surroundings. The room was spacious, filled with unfamiliar yet fascinating objects. He was about to ask Elara more about his role when she suddenly stepped closer, her expression softening. "There's something else you should know," she said, her voice lowering. "Our species values deep connections, both physical and emotional. You may find that some of our customs are intimate." Liam's pulse quickened at her words, realizing the implications. "Are you saying?" Elara nodded. "Yes. To fully integrate, you may be expected to form close bonds with our people. This is not just about understanding our culture, but also about experiencing it on a personal level." The weight of the situation began to sink in, but Liam was no stranger to challenges. "I understand," he said, his voice steady. "I'll do whatever it takes." Elara smiled, a hint of admiration in her eyes. "Good. I look forward to seeing how you adapt, Sergeant Carter. Welcome to your new life." As she left him to explore his new home, Liam felt a sense of anticipation building within him. This was more than just an assignment. It was the start of an adventure that would test his limits in ways he had never imagined. He was ready to face whatever lay ahead, determined to prove that humanity could thrive even in the most unexpected of circumstances. Secrets of the aoyan society. As Tyrus settled into his new role within Ambassador Zillia Starfire's household, he quickly realized that life among the aoyans was more complex than he had initially thought. The culture was rich with traditions, unspoken rules, and a deep sense of pride in their ancient heritage. Tyrus found himself both fascinated and perplexed by the intricacies of aoyan society. Zillia, ever the attentive hostess, took it upon herself to educate Tyrus about her people's ways. She explained the importance of honor in aoyan culture, how every action was weighed and measured not just by its outcome, but by the intent behind it. The aoyans valued diplomacy, intellect, and the pursuit of knowledge above all else, and Tyrus soon understood that his position in Zillia's household was more than just a cultural exchange. It was a test of his ability to adapt and thrive in a foreign environment. The aoyan capital was a place of breathtaking beauty and subtle danger. The towering crystalline spires that dotted the skyline were not just architectural marvels, but also served as symbols of power and status among the aoyan elite. Zillia's residence, a luxurious penthouse high above the city, offered a panoramic view of the bustling metropolis below. From this vantage point, Tyrus could see the myriad of flying vehicles zipping between buildings, the bustling marketplaces filled with exotic goods, and the serene parks where aoyans engaged in quiet contemplation. Despite the alien environment, Tyrus felt a strange sense of belonging. The aoyans, while different in many ways, shared certain values with humans, chief among them a desire to explore, learn, and improve themselves. Tyrus found himself drawn to these qualities, and he began to see his time on Aroth Prime as an opportunity to grow not just as a soldier, but as a person. Zillia, however, had other plans for him. One evening, as they sat together on a balcony overlooking the city, she turned to him with a serious expression. "Tyrus, you must understand that your presence here is not merely for observation," she said, her golden eyes locking onto his. "There are those within the aoyan society who view humanity with suspicion, who believe that your people are a threat to our way of life. You must prove them wrong." Tyrus frowned. "And how am I supposed to do that?" "By showing them the strength of your character, your resilience, and your capacity for empathy," Zillia replied. "You are not just an emissary, Tyrus. You are a bridge between our worlds. If you succeed, it could pave the way for deeper cooperation between our species. But if you fail..." Her voice trailed off, leaving the implication hanging in the air. Tyrus nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of the situation. He had thought his mission was simple: guard the embassy, learn about the aoyans, and return home. But now he realized that the stakes were much higher. He was not just a soldier, he was a representative of humanity, and his actions would reflect on his entire species. The days that followed were a whirlwind of diplomatic meetings, cultural events, and private lessons with Zillia. Tyrus learned about aoyan politics, their history, and even their unique art forms. He met with influential figures within the aoyan government, each encounter a delicate dance of words and gestures as he tried to navigate the complex social landscape. But it wasn't all work. Zillia made sure that Tyrus experienced the pleasures of aoyan life as well. She took him to grand banquets where the finest aoyan cuisine was served, to theaters where performances unlike anything on Earth were staged, and even to secluded gardens where the two of them could relax and talk without the pressures of their respective roles. It was during one of these quiet moments that Tyrus learned something that shook him to his core. Zillia revealed that the aoyan society was facing a crisis, one that had been kept secret from the public. "Our people are dying, Tyrus," Zillia said softly, her usual confident demeanor replaced by a rare vulnerability. "Our birth rates have been declining for centuries, and no matter what we do, we cannot reverse the trend. If things continue as they are, the aoyan race will eventually disappear." Tyrus was stunned, but he was so advanced. "Surely there must be something you can do." "We have tried everything," Zillia replied, her voice tinged with sadness. But our bodies have become too specialized, too dependent on our technology. We have lost the ability to adapt, to change. That is why we sought out your people. We hoped that by learning from you, by understanding what makes humanity so resilient, we could find a way to save ourselves. Tyrus was silent, grappling with the enormity of what he had just learned. The Aoyans were not just interested in humanity, they were desperate for their survival. And now he was a key part of their plan. As the days turned into weeks, Tyrus became more and more immersed in Aoyan society. He formed bonds with the people he met, learned their stories, and gained a deeper appreciation for their culture. But the weight of his mission never left him. He knew that he was walking a fine line, and that one wrong move could have disastrous consequences. But Tyrus was a Marine, and Marines didn't back down from a challenge. He was determined to see this mission through, to do whatever it took to help the Aoyans, and to prove that humanity was worthy of their trust. And so, with Zelia by his side, Tyrus prepared to face the trials that lay ahead. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: his real mission had only just begun. A crisis unveiled. Tyrus knew that his newfound purpose on Arath Prime was much more than diplomacy. It was about survival, both for the Aoyans and perhaps for humanity. The revelation of the Aoyans' declining birth rates weighed heavily on his mind, pushing him to dive deeper into the intricacies of their society, science, and the mysterious reasons behind their plight. Zelia, sensing Tyrus's growing determination, decided to share more about the depths of their crisis. One evening, after another round of diplomatic meetings and cultural events, she led him to a hidden chamber deep within her residence. The room was unlike anything Tyrus had seen, a blend of organic materials and advanced technology, pulsating with a soft bioluminescent glow. "This is where we keep our most guarded secrets," Zelia explained as she approached a central console. "Only a few Aoyans have access to this information. You must understand, Tyrus, that what you are about to see could change everything." With a wave of her hand, a holographic display materialized in the air, showing complex data streams and genetic models. Tyrus could barely comprehend the intricacies of what he was seeing, but he understood the gravity of it. "This," Zelia began, pointing to the models, "is our genetic code. Over millennia, our species has become increasingly specialized. We have achieved great things: extended lifespans, heightened intellect, and unparalleled physical abilities. But this came at a cost. We have lost our genetic diversity, our ability to adapt to new environments and challenges, and now we are paying the price." Tyrus stared at the display, trying to piece together what Zelia was saying. "So you're saying your advancements have backfired? That you've engineered yourselves into a corner?" "Precisely," Zelia replied with a nod. "Our technology allowed us to enhance ourselves, but it also made us fragile. Our reproductive systems have become too dependent on artificial interventions, and even those are failing now. We are, quite literally, running out of time." Tyrus felt a chill run down his spine. The Aoyans, once thought to be nearly invincible, were on the brink of extinction, and they had turned to humanity in the hopes of finding a solution. "How do you think we can help?" Tyrus asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. Zelia looked at him, her gaze intense. "We believe that your species' genetic diversity and adaptability might hold the key to reversing our decline. Your ability to thrive in diverse environments, to evolve and overcome challenges, these are traits we have lost. If we can study your genetics, learn from them, we might find a way to save our people." Tyrus understood the enormity of what Zelia was asking. This wasn't just about sharing knowledge or culture, it was about sharing the very essence of humanity. He wondered what the implications of such a collaboration could be, both for the Aoyans and for humanity. But before he could ponder further, Zelia continued. "There is another complication. Not all Aoyans are in favor of this plan. There are factions within our society that believe we should preserve our purity at all costs, even if it means our extinction. They see humanity as a threat, not a solution." Tyrus's thoughts immediately turned to the growing tensions he had sensed among some of the aoyans he had met. Is that why there's been so much resistance to our presence here? Yes, Zilia confirmed, and it is why you must tread carefully. You are not just a diplomat, Tyrus. You are a symbol of hope for some and a symbol of fear for others. The future of our alliance, and possibly our survival, depends on the choices you make. The weight of Zilia's words settled heavily on Tyrus. He knew that his actions in the coming days and weeks would be crucial. He would need to navigate the political minefield of Aoyan society, build alliances, and find a way to convince the doubters that humanity could be their salvation. But Tyrus was no stranger to adversity. His years as a Marine had taught him the value of perseverance, of pushing forward even when the odds seemed insurmountable. He was determined to see this mission through, to find a way to help the Aoyans, and to prove that humanity could be a force for good in the galaxy. As he left the hidden chamber and returned to the main part of Zilia's residence, Tyrus felt a renewed sense of purpose. The challenges ahead would be great, but he was ready to face them. The fate of 2 species might rest on his shoulders, but he was prepared to carry that burden. In the days that followed, Tyrus threw himself into his work. He attended more diplomatic meetings, participated in cultural exchanges, and continued to learn everything he could about Aoyan society. He also began to quietly build a network of allies, Aoyans who were open to the idea of collaboration with humanity, who saw the potential for a shared future. But not everyone was convinced. The more progress Tyrus made, the more resistance he encountered. Rumors began to circulate about his true intentions, and he found himself the target of subtle threats and veiled warnings. It was clear that not all Aoyans were willing to embrace change, and some were willing to go to great lengths to preserve their way of life. One night, as Tyrus was returning to his quarters, he was ambushed. A group of masked Aoyans cornered him in a deserted alley, their intentions clear. But Tyrus was a Marine, and he wasn't about to go down without a fight. Using his training and quick reflexes, he managed to fend off his attackers, leaving them dazed and retreating into the shadows. The incident shook Tyrus, but also steeled his resolve. He knew now that his mission was more dangerous than he had realized, but he was determined to see it through. The Aoyans needed humanity, and he would do whatever it took to help them, even if it meant putting his own life on the line. As he nursed his wounds and prepared for the next phase of his mission, Tyrus couldn't help but wonder what the future held. The stakes were higher than ever, and the challenges greater than he had imagined, but he was ready. The fate of 2 species was intertwined, and Tyrus was determined to ensure that both would survive and thrive. The hidden threat. The attack on Tyrus was a stark reminder of the dangers lurking beneath the surface of Aoyan society. As he recovered from the ambush, he realized that the resistance to humanity's presence was far more organized and dangerous than he had anticipated. He needed to act swiftly, but cautiously, to uncover the hidden forces working against him. Zilia, alarmed by the attack, insisted on increasing security around Tyrus. She also introduced him to a trusted group of Aoyans who were part of the underground movement advocating for collaboration with humanity. These Aoyans, like Zilia, believed that the survival of their species depended on embracing the strengths of both civilizations. Among these allies was Saran, an Aoyan scientist who had been studying human genetics for years, even before Tyrus's arrival. Saran was a brilliant mind, deeply curious about human biology and its potential to revitalize the Aoyan gene pool. He had long suspected that the key to reversing the Aoyan decline lay in the genetic diversity that humans possessed. Tyrus, Saran began during one of their late-night meetings, I've been analyzing human DNA for some time now, and what I found is extraordinary. Your species has a resilience encoded in its very essence, a resilience that we have lost. If we can harness that, we might be able to reverse our reproductive decline. Tyrus listened intently, aware of the immense implications. But how do we do that? How do we merge our genetics without compromising the integrity of other species? Soren smiled, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. That's the challenge, isn't it? But I believe we can achieve it through a careful, controlled process. It's not just about splicing genes. It's about understanding the underlying principles of what makes your species so adaptable and integrating that into our own biology. Tyrus nodded, realizing that this would require a level of cooperation and trust that had never been achieved between humans and another species. But there are those who will fight us every step of the way. The attack on me proves that. Indeed, Saran agreed, his expression turning serious. There are factions within our society who fear change, who see humanity as a threat to our way of life. They are powerful, and they will stop at nothing to preserve what they see as the purity of the aoyan race. As they continued to strategize, Tyrus realized that they needed more than just scientific breakthroughs. They needed to win the hearts and minds of the aoyan people. He knew that science alone would not sway those who were deeply entrenched in their beliefs. They needed a broader strategy, one that combined diplomacy, cultural exchange, and the promise of a brighter future. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Tyrus and Zilia worked tirelessly to strengthen their alliances, reaching out to key figures in the aoyan government and society. They organized public forums, where Tyrus spoke passionately about the potential for a shared future between humans and aoyans. They showcased the benefits of collaboration, from cultural enrichment to technological advancements. But as their movement gained momentum, so did the opposition. The attacks became more frequent, more coordinated. It was clear that the anti-human faction was growing desperate. They could sense that they were losing ground, and they were willing to do anything to stop Tyrus and his allies. One evening, as Tyrus was preparing for another public address, Zilia received an urgent message. A group of aoyan extremists had taken control of a key facility, a genetic research lab where Saran was conducting his experiments. They were threatening to destroy the lab and all its data unless Tyrus surrendered and left Aroth Prime immediately. Tyrus felt a surge of anger and determination. He had come too far to back down now. "We can't let them destroy the lab," he said, his voice firm. "That research is our only hope of finding a solution." Zilia nodded, her expression resolute. "We'll need to act quickly. I've already alerted the authorities, but we can't rely solely on them. We need to take matters into our own hands." Tyrus and Zilia quickly assembled a team of their most trusted allies, including Saran, who was determined to protect his work. They devised a plan to infiltrate the facility, disable the extremists, and secure the research. The mission was risky, but Tyrus was no stranger to danger. As they approached the lab under the cover of darkness, he could feel the tension in the air. The stakes were higher than ever, and the fate of two species hung in the balance. The team moved silently through the facility, using their combined skills to neutralize the guards and disarm the explosives that had been planted throughout the lab. Tyrus led the charge, his military training kicking in as he guided his team through the complex. Finally, they reached the central control room, where the leaders of the extremist group were holed up. Tyrus burst through the door, his weapon at the ready, and confronted the ringleader, a fanatical aoyan who believed that their species' only path to survival was through isolation and purity. "You don't have to do this," Tyrus said, his voice steady but commanding. "We can find a way to save your people without resorting to violence." The ringleader sneered. "You think we need your help? We are the superior race. We don't need your inferior genetics to survive." Tyrus shook his head. "This isn't about superiority. It's about survival. Your species is dying, and we have a chance to save it, together. But only if you let go of this hatred and fear." For a moment, there was silence as the ringleader wavered, torn between his beliefs and the stark reality of their situation. But before he could respond, one of his followers lunged at Tyrus, weapon in hand. A shot rang out, and the ringleader fell, his expression frozen in shock. Zilia lowered her weapon, her face grim. "It had to be done," she said quietly, her voice tinged with sadness. The remaining extremists, seeing their leader fall, surrendered. The crisis was over, but the scars would remain. Tyrus knew that this was just the beginning of a long and difficult journey, but he also knew that they had taken a crucial step toward a future where humans and aoyans could coexist and thrive together. As the sun rose over Oroth Prime, Tyrus stood with Zilia and Saran outside the lab, watching the dawn of a new day. There was still much work to be done, but for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope. They had faced the hidden threat and emerged victorious, and now they could focus on the greater challenge, finding a way to save the aoyan race and forge a lasting alliance between their two species. But deep within the shadows of aoyan society, other forces were stirring, forces that would stop at nothing to see Tyrus and his mission fail. The battle was far from over, and Tyrus knew that the greatest challenges still lay ahead. Shadows of betrayal. In the days following the successful mission at the genetic lab, Oroth Prime seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. Tyrus, Zilia, and Saran were hailed as heroes by those who supported the human-aoyan alliance. The research was saved, and the extremists were defeated, but the underlying tensions in aoyan society remained palpable. Despite the victory, Tyrus couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of the opposition. The attack had been bold, but it had also been reckless, a sign of desperation. The real threat, he feared, was still lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. As Tyrus continued his diplomatic efforts, he began to notice subtle changes in the behavior of some aoyan officials. Meetings that had once been cordial and open became tense and guarded. Promises of support were suddenly met with vague responses or outright silence. It was as if a shadow had fallen over the once promising alliance, casting doubt on everything they had worked so hard to achieve. Zilia, too, sensed the shift. "Something's not right," she confided in Tyrus one evening as they reviewed the latest reports from their allies. "The extremists we faced were just the tip of the iceberg. I fear there are others, more powerful, working behind the scenes to undermine our efforts." Tyrus nodded, his expression grim. "I've noticed it too. We need to find out who's pulling the strings before it's too late." Their suspicions were confirmed when Saran, who had been continuing his research under heavy guard, discovered something alarming. While analyzing recent genetic samples from the aoyan population, he uncovered a pattern that suggested someone was tampering with the data, altering results to make it seem as though the collaboration between humans and aoyans was failing. "This isn't just sabotage," Saran explained, his voice filled with concern. "It's a coordinated effort to discredit our work. If this continues, the entire project could be jeopardized." Tyrus felt a surge of anger. They had come too far, sacrificed too much, to let their mission be derailed by hidden enemies. "We need to find out who's behind this and stop them before they do any more damage." Their investigation led them to a high-ranking aoyan official named Arak, a prominent figure who had always been vocal about his opposition to the alliance with humanity. Arak had publicly denounced the collaboration as a threat to aoyan purity, but Tyrus and Zilia suspected that his true motives were far more sinister. With the help of their allies, Tyrus and Zilia began to gather evidence against Arak, digging into his background, his connections, and his activities. What they uncovered was a web of deceit that reached deep into the heart of the aoyan government. Arak, it seemed, was part of a secret faction that believed the only way to save the aoyan race was through isolation and autocracy. This faction, known as the Pure Dominion, had been manipulating public opinion and sabotaging the alliance from the start. They saw humanity not as a potential partner, but as a threat to their control over Oroth Prime. The more Tyrus and Zilia uncovered, the more dangerous their situation became. They realized that Arak and the Pure Dominion were not only working to discredit the human-aoyan alliance, but were also plotting to seize control of the government, using fear and misinformation to rally the populace to their cause. Tyrus knew they had to act quickly. "We need to expose Arak and the Pure Dominion before they can execute their plan. If they succeed, everything we've worked for will be lost." Zilia agreed, but she also knew the risks. If we move too quickly, we could tip them off and they'll go underground. We need to gather irrefutable evidence and bring it to the public in a way that leaves no room for doubt. The plan was set in motion. Tyrus, Zilia, and Saren worked tirelessly to gather the necessary evidence, secretly recording conversations, intercepting communications, and compiling a dossier that would reveal the full extent of Arak's treachery. They also reached out to trusted allies within the government and military, quietly building a coalition that could act when the time was right. But as they moved closer to their goal, the Pure Dominions struck back. One night, as Tyrus was returning from a meeting with a key ally, he was ambushed again. This time, the attack was more coordinated, more deadly. Tyrus fought back with all the skill and determination that had seen him through countless battles, but he was outnumbered and outgunned. Just as it seemed the end was near, a group of aoyan soldiers loyal to Zilia arrived, driving off the attackers and saving Tyrus's life. But the message was clear. The Pure Dominion knew they were being hunted, and they were willing to kill to protect their secrets. In the aftermath of the attack, Tyrus realized that they could no longer afford to wait. The Pure Dominion was growing bolder, and the longer they delayed, the more dangerous the situation would become. With the evidence in hand, Tyrus and Zilia made their move. They organized a public broadcast, reaching out to the entire planet with their message. As the holographic images of Arak's crimes played across every screen on Aroth Prime, the truth was laid bare for all to see. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. The aoyan people, who had been teetering on the edge of fear and uncertainty, were galvanized by the revelation. Protests erupted across the planet, demanding justice and an end to the Pure Dominion's influence. Arak and his co-conspirators were quickly arrested, their plans for a coup dismantled. The Pure Dominion, once a shadowy force working behind the scenes, was exposed and dismantled, its members scattered or brought to justice. But the victory came at a cost. The attempted coup had shaken Aroth Prime to its core, and the road to recovery would be long and difficult. Trust between humans and aoyans had been tested, and while the alliance had survived, it would take time to heal the wounds inflicted by the Pure Dominion's treachery. Tyrus, Zilia, and Saren stood together on the steps of the aoyan capital, looking out at the crowd that had gathered to celebrate their victory. They had faced betrayal, violence, and the threat of extinction, but they had emerged stronger, their resolve unbroken. "We did it," Zilia said, her voice filled with pride and relief. Tyrus nodded, though he knew that their journey was far from over. "We've won this battle, but the war is still ahead of us. We have to rebuild, to restore trust, and to ensure that this never happens again." Saren, ever the scientist, added, "And we must continue our research. The future of both our species depends on it." As the crowd cheered, Tyrus felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced the shadows of betrayal and emerged victorious, but the real challenge, the challenge of building a lasting peace and a shared future, was just beginning. But with allies like Zilia and Saren by his side, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The alliance had been tested, and it had survived. Now, it was time to move forward, to build a future where humans and aoyans could thrive together, united by their shared determination to survive and flourish in a galaxy filled with both danger and opportunity. Echoes of the Abyss. The victory of the Pure Dominion had solidified the human-aoyan alliance, but it also left a lingering unease. The scars of betrayal ran deep, and while the aoyans had turned against the extremist faction, the question of trust remained. Tyrus, Zilia, and Saren knew that their work was far from finished. The galaxy was vast, and the dangers they faced were not limited to Aroth Prime. In the weeks following the coup's downfall, Tyrus received a message from Earth. It was encrypted and marked urgent. As he read the transmission, his expression grew more serious. The message was from the United Earth Command, informing him of a strange anomaly detected near the edge of the galaxy, a place known as the Black Abyss. It was a region of space shrouded in mystery, feared for its gravitational anomalies and the eerie silence that surrounded it. Ships that ventured too close were never heard from again. The message continued, describing a faint signal that had been detected coming from the abyss. It was an old Earth signal, one that had not been used for centuries. The implications were staggering. Something, or someone, was out there, and it was reaching out to humanity. Tyrus shared the message with Zilia and Saran. This could be a trap, Zilia warned, her instincts as a military strategist kicking in. The Black Abyss is known for being a graveyard of ships. We can't risk sending a team out there without knowing what we're up against. Saran, however, was intrigued. If the signal is genuine, it could be a relic from humanity's past, something that could offer us invaluable knowledge. Or it could be a call for help. We can't ignore it. Tyrus was torn. The mission was dangerous, but the potential rewards were too great to pass up. After discussing the risks with his team, he made his decision. We need to investigate this. If there's a chance that someone out there is trying to communicate with us, we owe it to them, and to ourselves, to find out the truth. The decision was met with a mix of excitement and apprehension among the crew. They knew the stories about the Black Abyss, but they also knew that Tyrus was right. If there was even a small chance that they could uncover something of value, it was worth the risk. Tyrus, Zilia, and Saran prepared for the journey, selecting a small team of their most trusted allies. They would take a stealth ship, equipped with the latest in cloaking technology, and make their way to the coordinates provided by Earth Command. As they approached the Black Abyss, the crew felt a growing sense of unease. The stars seemed to dim, and the usual hum of the ship's engines became muted, as if the very fabric of space was absorbing all sound and light. The abyss was a vast, dark void, its edges blurred and undefined, as though it were a wound in the universe itself. The ship's sensors struggled to get a clear reading. Distortions in space-time made it difficult to navigate, and the crew had to rely on manual controls to avoid the gravitational anomalies that dotted the area. Despite the challenges, they pressed on, drawn by the faint signal that had brought them here. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the source of the signal. There, floating in the abyss, was a derelict spacecraft, an ancient vessel of human design, its hull scarred and battered by time. The ship was massive, its silhouette barely visible against the inky darkness of the surrounding space. Tyrus ordered the ship to dock with the derelict. As the airlocks connected, he, Zilia, and Saran suited up and prepared to board. The interior of the ancient ship was eerily silent, the corridors dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. Dust floated in the air, and the walls were covered in strange symbols, remnants of a long-lost crew's attempts to communicate or perhaps ward off something unseen. As they explored the ship, they found evidence of a struggle. Blast marks scarred the walls, and the remains of ancient weapons were scattered across the floor. But there were no bodies, no signs of life, only the echoes of whatever had transpired here long ago. In the ship's central command room, they found the source of the signal, a still-functioning computer terminal, its screen displaying a repeating message in an archaic human language. Saran quickly began working to decipher it. As the message became clear, Tyrus felt a chill run down his spine. It was a distress signal sent by the ship's AI centuries ago. The crew had encountered something in the abyss, something that defied explanation. The message described an entity, a presence that had invaded the ship, taking the crew one by one. The last entry was from the ship's captain, who had sealed himself in the command room, hoping to send out a final warning before the entity reached him. But the most disturbing part of the message was a single phrase, repeated over and over: "The abyss is alive." Zilia's voice was barely a whisper. "What do you think it means?" Soren shook his head. "I don't know. But whatever it is, it's still out there." Before they could react, the ship's lights flickered, and the temperature dropped suddenly. A low hum filled the air, growing louder and more oppressive by the second. The walls seemed to close in around them, and shadows began to move in the corners of their vision, shifting and writhing as if they were alive. Tyrus drew his weapon, scanning a room for any signs of movement. "We need to get out of here now." But as they turned to leave, the airlock door slammed shut, trapping them inside the command room. The ship's systems began to malfunction, lights flickering wildly as the hum grew into a deafening roar. The shadows in the room converged, taking shape and forming into something that resembled a figure, dark, featureless, and utterly alien. Zilia fired at the figure, but the energy blasts passed through it harmlessly. The entity seemed to ripple in response, its form shifting and changing as it advanced toward them. The temperature continued to drop, and Tyrus could feel a deep, primal fear rising within him. A fear that this was something beyond their understanding, beyond anything they had ever faced. Saren frantically worked at the terminal, trying to override the ship's systems and open the airlock. "I need more time." Tyrus and Zilia stood their ground, trying to keep the entity at bay, but it was clear that their weapons were useless. The entity moved with an unnatural fluidity, its form constantly changing as it reached out toward them. They could feel its presence in their minds, an overwhelming sense of despair and hopelessness that threatened to consume them. Just as the entity was about to reach them, Saren succeeded in overriding the system. The airlock doors hissed open, and the three of them bolted out of the command room, racing back to their ship. As they docked and prepared to leave, the entity began to pursue them through the derelict ship's corridors, its presence growing stronger with each passing moment. They could feel it pulling at them, trying to drag them back into the abyss. Tyrus ordered the ship to disengage and retreat at full speed. The stealth ship's engines roared to life, and they shot away from the derelict, back into the relative safety of space. As they escaped, the entity seemed to fade, its presence weakening until it was just a distant echo in their minds. But the encounter had left its mark. The Black Abyss was no longer just a place of mystery. It was a living entity, a malevolent force that defied understanding. As they returned to a rough prime, Tyrus couldn't shake the feeling that they had only glimpsed a fraction of the true horror that lay within the abyss. The signal, the derelict, the entity, they were all part of something much larger, something that had been waiting in the darkness for centuries, and now it knew that humanity had returned. As they docked back at a rough prime, Tyrus knew that their mission had taken on a new urgency. The Black Abyss was alive, and it was watching. Whatever secrets it held, they would have to face them head-on, for the fate of humanity, and possibly the entire galaxy, depended on it. But as they prepared for the next phase of their journey, they couldn't help but wonder. Had they truly escaped the abyss? Or had they brought a part of it back with them? The final revelation. The days following their return to Aruth Prime were filled with tension and uncertainty. The encounter with the entity in the Black Abyss had left Tyrus, Zilia, and Saren deeply unsettled. They had faced many dangers before, but this was something different, something beyond the realm of science or logic. Despite the victory over the pure Dominion, the shadow of the abyss loomed large over their thoughts. As they debriefed the United Earth Command, it became clear that their findings had sparked a wave of concern among the galaxy's leadership. The mere idea of a sentient, malevolent force lurking in the Black Abyss was enough to unsettle even the most seasoned military minds. The distress signal, the ancient derelict, and the entity were undeniable evidence that something unimaginable lay hidden in the void. But Tyrus knew that this was only the beginning. The Black Abyss was not just a threat, it was a mystery that demanded to be solved, and if humanity was to survive, they needed to understand what they were dealing with. United Earth Command authorized a full investigation, assembling a task force of the best scientists, strategists, and explorers from across the galaxy. Tyrus, Zilia, and Saren were placed at the head of the mission, tasked with leading the effort to uncover the truth about the abyss. The task force was equipped with cutting-edge technology, including enhanced scanners, AI-driven analysis systems, and a fleet of advanced stealth ships designed to withstand the abyss's gravitational anomalies. As preparations were made, Tyrus found himself drawn to the ancient derelict's data. The ship's logs held fragments of information, references to a long-lost expedition, rumors of ancient civilizations, and whispers of a forgotten power that had once ruled the galaxy. The more he studied the data, the more he realized that the entity in the abyss was not an isolated phenomenon. It was connected to something much older, something that had been buried in the annals of history. Celia, the strategist, analyzed the entity's behavior. "It wasn't just attacking us," she said one evening as they pored over the logs. "It was testing us, probing our defenses, trying to understand us. It's as if it was curious." Saran, who had spent hours deciphering the ship's ancient language, nodded in agreement. The crew of that ship, whatever happened to them, they were trying to communicate with it, but it was beyond their understanding, beyond anything they had ever encountered. The entity's very existence seems to defy our concept of life. As the task force prepared to depart, Tyrus couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. The abyss was not just a threat, it was a gateway to knowledge that could change the fate of the galaxy. But it was also a door to unimaginable danger. The fleet set course for the Black Abyss, entering the void with a mixture of trepidation and determination. This time, they were prepared, equipped with everything humanity and their allies had to offer. But even so, as they approached the abyss, the familiar sense of unease returned. The darkness seemed to swallow the light of their ships, and the silence was so profound that it seemed to press against their minds. As they reached the coordinates of the derelict, the task force began scanning the area, searching for any sign of the entity. For hours there was nothing, just the empty, oppressive darkness. But then the sensors picked up something, an energy signature, faint but unmistakable. It was coming from deep within the abyss, from a place where no ship had ever dared to venture. Tyrus gave the order to follow the signal. The fleet advanced, navigating through the gravitational distortions with the utmost care. The further they went, the stronger the signal became, and with it, the sense of foreboding. The crew could feel the abyss watching them, a cold, unblinking gaze that seemed to penetrate their very souls. Finally, they reached the source of the signal, a massive structure, hidden deep within the abyss. It was ancient, its design unlike anything they had ever seen before. The structure was surrounded by a field of energy, pulsating with a strange, almost hypnotic rhythm. As they approached, the energy field fluctuated, and the signal changed. It was no longer a distress call, it was a message. Saran worked quickly to translate it, his hands trembling as he realized what it was. "It's an invitation," Saran said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The entity, it wants us to enter." The decision was made to send a small team inside. Tyrus, Zilia, and Saran volunteered, knowing that this was what they had come for. They'd boarded a shuttle and approached the structure, passing through the energy field. As they entered, they were enveloped in a blinding light, and for a moment, everything went white. When their vision cleared, they found themselves in a vast chamber, its walls lined with strange, glowing symbols. The air was thick with an otherworldly energy, and in the center of the chamber stood a monolithic structure, pulsating with the same rhythm as the energy field outside. The entity was there, waiting for them. But this time, it did not take on the terrifying, shifting form they had encountered before. Instead, it appeared as a figure, a humanoid shape, composed of pure energy, its features indistinct but undeniably present. The entity spoke, not with words, but with thoughts, images, emotions, and concepts flooding their minds. It showed them visions of the past, of civilizations long forgotten, of ancient wars fought across the stars. It showed them the rise and fall of empires, the birth of the galaxy itself, and the dark, hidden truth that lay at the heart of it all. The abyss, the entity explained, was a remnant of a forgotten age, a time when beings of unimaginable power had ruled the galaxy. These beings had created the abyss as a prison, a place to contain something so dangerous that it could not be allowed to exist in the universe. But over the eons, the prison had weakened, and the entity had awakened, a guardian of sorts, bound to ensure that the darkness within the abyss did not escape. But now, With humanity's arrival, the entity had come to a realization. The galaxy was changing, and the old ways were no longer sufficient to contain the dangers that lurked in the shadows. It was time for a new order, a new understanding of the balance between light and dark, life and death. The entity offered them a choice. They could leave, return to their lives, and forget everything they had seen. Or they could stay, learn the secrets of the abyss, and take up the mantle of guardianship, protecting the galaxy from the threats that lay within and beyond. Tyrus, Zilia, and Saran exchanged glances, each of them understanding the gravity of the decision before them. They had faced countless dangers, seen the worst the galaxy had to offer, but this was something else entirely. The knowledge they could gain here was beyond anything they had ever imagined, but so too was the responsibility. After what felt like an eternity, Tyrus made the decision. They would stay, they would learn, and they would protect the galaxy from the darkness that lay hidden in the abyss. As they accepted the entity's offer, the chamber began to change. The walls shifted, the symbols glowing brighter, and the monolithic structure opened, revealing a vast network of knowledge, a repository of the universe's deepest secrets. The entity stepped back, its form dissolving into the energy that filled the chamber. "You are now the guardians of the abyss," the entity's voice echoed in their minds. "The darkness will rise again, but you will be ready." With that, the entity was gone, leaving Tyrus, Zilia, and Saran alone in the chamber, surrounded by the knowledge and power of the abyss. As they began to explore their new roles, they couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and trepidation. The galaxy was vast, and the threats they would face were unlike anything they had ever encountered. But they were no longer just explorers, no longer just soldiers. They were the guardians of the abyss, and with that title came a new purpose. And so the story of Calda's legacy came to a close, but the journey of Tyrus, Zilia, and Saran had only just begun. They would carry the knowledge of the abyss with them, protecting the galaxy from the shadows that lay within and beyond, ensuring that the light of humanity would never fade. For in the end, it was not just about survival. It was about understanding, about balance, and about the enduring spirit of humanity in the face of the unknown. And as they looked out into the vast expanse of the galaxy, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as the guardians of the abyss.